morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. It is Monday, 8:06 a.m. Interesting week ahead of us. Our goal this week is to educate and inform you about the one area that appears to be destroying our nation. In fact, let me rephrase that. It doesn't appear to be. It has been working against the best interests of America for a very, very long time. We're going to discuss this week the issues around and surrounding administrative agencies and the ability that they have to pass regulation that parades itself about as law. And after this morning's bullet points, we will discuss that, and we will use examples this week of specific areas in which administrative agencies have utilized the authority delegated to them and the quote-unquote broad discretion given to them to subjugate America, our citizenry, operate in an extra-constitutional manner, and basically destroy the fabric of law and the rule of law within our nation. For my bullet points this morning, I'd like to read a letter which I received from a listener. I think it's interesting, and I'll be posting it up on the web today, and I'll put a link on our Facebook page as well. But I think this letter is worthy of a quick read. Recent events involving horrible crimes have raised the hue and cry for control of things, supposedly responsible for and touted as the root of the problem. This sleight of hand and misdirection by many in the public arena proposes to solve the problem by controlling the things and has largely ignored the real issue, which brings about these monstrous disasters. The cry to control the things is largely grandstanding by public figures who are determined to use the death of others to attract as much attention to themselves as possible and to portray themselves as the wise counselors who, after careful consideration, have crafted legislation that with certainty positively affect the safety of each of us. I do not believe that most of these persons are driven by any desire to do right by the public, but are instead chiefly concerned with the next election cycle and how many votes they can garner by proposing feel-good legislation. The truth is that this feel-good legislation has been tried before and shown to have little or no impact on the activities they claim to prevent. Interesting to note that most of the wise counselors have people around them who constantly carry things to protect them. Some of them carry things themselves. The matters important to the problem and that have received scant attention are the issues of culture, education, and ethics. These matters are far more complex in nature and require long-term and complex solutions that do not fit into a 30-second soundbite and therefore are not the subject of much discussion or scrutiny by the wise counselors. These things I speak of are, of course, guns, and in order to have a legitimate discussion about the subject, it is necessary to consider the cultural, legal, civil rights, and historic aspects of the matter. Hopefully, this can be accomplished in a thoughtful and articulate manner, setting aside emotion. It is also necessary to adhere to the tenets of intellectual honesty and to try to consider the full range of the matter, not merely considering those things which support a predetermined viewpoint or proposed solution. America gained its freedom through force of arms. This bit of history predisposes many Americans to consider firearms in a positive light, myself included. Many Americans are veterans of our nation's armed forces or have performed other national service and used firearms routinely in their military or other duties and consider this service to have been a great honor. This also causes many Americans to consider firearms in a positive light, myself included. The added aspect of having grown up in the hunting culture further adds to this positive leaning in regard to firearms. I say this to make full disclosure of my predisposition regarding firearms. The Founding Fathers were students of the world as a whole, and especially European history. They were students of the conflicts that preceded the American Revolution and our Constitution and Bill of Rights that reflect that study. It is no mistake that people entering into public service take an oath to, quote, uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. During these early times, weapons, including firearms, were held exclusively in the possession of kings and other rulers, and those in service swore their allegiance to a particular king or queen or other ruler in power. The momentous difference in the United States is that allegiance is sworn to the document that codifies and recognizes the natural rights of persons, and not to any individual. Contained in the Bill of Rights are many provisions, and all of them are individual rights. The Second Amendment is no exception, and the Supreme Court has so ruled, most recently in the case of U.S. v. Heller. In addition, the Subcommittee on the Constitution of the Committee of the Judiciary in the United States Senate, 97th Congress, 2nd Session, February 1982, left no doubt in their published study of the matter that, quote, the right to keep, possess, and bear or carry arms, end quote, is an individual right and was so intended by the founders. But legalese aside, let's look at the historical matter of gun control as practiced in this country since prior to its founding. The first victims of gun control were the Native Americans beginning in the New England colonies and progressing across the continent from the 1600s to the 1900s. How did gun control work out for them? Even when muskets became a trade item, they were seldom of the quality or accuracy of the same items afforded to the colonists and settlers. It was not until the late 1860s that limited numbers of Winchesters, Springfields, and other similar rifles made it into tribal hands, and by then they had been pushed halfway across the continent. Fast forward to the 1860s following the Civil War, and large numbers of freed blacks remained in the South or began to migrate north into the Midwest cities. In these areas, local gun control legislation is brought about with the express purpose of keeping guns out of the hands of freed blacks. This trend extended its reign until at least the 1960s, when Martin Luther King himself, who did possess guns in his home, was denied a permit to carry a concealed gun in the state of Alabama after his home had been bombed. Let's move forward to the early 1900s, when the only non-union miners left in America were in the states of Colorado and West Virginia. Most lived in dirt-poor conditions, shackled to the coal companies and their company stores. Do some research on the treatment of miners in Ludlow, Colorado, on April 20th, 1914, when state militias, today's National Guard, surrounded a miner camp and opened fire with machine guns after disarming the camp residents. Then research the attempts of West Virginia miners to meet and peaceably assemble in Mingo County, West Virginia, and the subsequent Battle of Blair Mountain in 1921 that pitted coal company guards, state militia, also National Guard, and government aircraft against miners trying to exercise their First Amendment right. Hunting rifles and shotguns versus machine guns. A good primer for this is When Miners March by William C. Blizzard. Another good study that falls in line with this narrative is the treatment of the World War I GI bonus marchers in 1932 in Washington, D.C., when federal troops under the command of Douglas MacArthur and George Patton, as well as Eisenhower, used tanks and machine guns to run off another group of Americans attempting to exercise their First Amendment rights. The bonus marchers were embarrassing the administration. I'll bet Douglas MacArthur, George Patton, and Eisenhower were proud to have had a part in the deaths of several World War veterans that day. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, I'm going to finish reading this letter because I think it's a worthwhile understanding of where we've come historically in the desire of government to disarm Americans. And while I don't disagree with the tail end of his statement or his submission, I will indicate that, for the most part, the vast majority of the historical background on this is correct. This is America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. You're listening to us until 9 a.m. this morning. We'll return in just a few moments.
We're here today to ask people about marriage.
For starters, what's the best thing about being married?
Who I get to stay married to.
Togetherness.
To me, is having a companion
My favorite thing about being married is that I have a partner.
Do you think your marriage is good for more than just the two of you?
Does it influence those around us?
Yeah, I think
in a positive way?
I think so.
I would hope that people would see that when we're together that we really have a very true affection for each other.
What everybody wants, and we know we're lucky to have it.
The energy we give out in our home, I think, spreads out to other people.
Your marriage just continues to go on and on and on.
Oh, sure, and it'll affect generations after us.
I think it really sort of stabilizes your whole community. It's a cornerstone of a society, right?
Sounds like a good marriage goes a long way.
It touches a lot of people.
Want to improve your marriage? For ideas, go to foryourmarriage.org. A message from the Catholic Church.
All right. I'd like to finish this emailed submission because I think, again, that it has some value to you in terms of your understanding from whence our legislative endeavors come to try to separate Americans from their firearms and their Second Amendment rights. Let's chug up to the time in 1946 when GIs returning from World War II in McGinn County, Tennessee, put forth a slate of candidates in the primary to oust a corrupt political machine in power. After the election of the McGinn County Sheriff, who shows up with his deputies and confiscates the ballot boxes, removing them to the county courthouse. The sheriff stated that he would have the ballots counted, and he would announce the winner. Veterans assembled and demanded the release of the ballot boxes to be counted according to law. The sheriff refused, and a gun battle ensued. The sheriff only relinquished control after GIs using dynamite blew the front stoop off the courthouse. How about guns in the hands of government representatives at Kent State University? How did that work out? Dozens of children were also killed in Waco, Texas, under the guise of protecting them. So even a cursory review of history reveals that gun control is about people control, especially people who don't toe the party line or belong to the in group, as in power. Gun control, as utilized in the United States, has often been a tool for keeping specified groups of people in line by denying them their civil rights. As for the hue and cry about military weapons, I'll bet the miners and their wives and their children in Ludlow, Colorado, huddling beneath canvas tents while machine gun bullets whizzed overhead, were thinking that a couple of military-style weapons with high-capacity magazines might not have been a bad idea. Claims that civilians don't need guns with high-capacity magazines rings hollow and obfuscates the important issues. I don't accept a politician with armed guards deciding what I need to possess for my protection. Registration schemes create an unnecessary bureaucracy whose real purpose is to provide lists for future gun confiscation as exercised by Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Castro, and many others. Both of the above proposals will be as successful as prohibition. Canada recently tried gun registration, as did Australia and the UK. It hasn't worked. The colonists at Lexington and Concord, who faced off with the British regular army, did so with technology equal to or superior to that carried by King George's men. The British had muskets. Most of the colonials had rifles. I do not believe that there is a conspiracy to deprive Americans of their Second Amendment rights. Yet the historically repetitive nature of actions by government representatives and others to deprive Americans of many of their civil rights could easily lead some to believe it is so. Any mention of Operation Fast and Furious would have to be handled in a separate document. Let's begin by strictly enforcing the laws already on the books. Let's take steps to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally disturbed. Let's begin teaching civics and ethics and critical thinking in our schools, so we create citizens that realize that with every civil right comes duties and responsibilities. Let's hold parents accountable for their children's behavior. Hell, let's hold adults accountable for their behavior. A policeman in the school would also not be a bad thing. A little church going wouldn't hurt most of us either. Most recently, the news media has been abuzz with reports of civilians misusing guns. Funny thing is, not much of anybody is carrying the daily reports of drug dealers and other criminals in metropolitan areas as they battle with each other and police for possession of their turf. Not many reports either about the criminal use of guns along the southwest border recently. Has that activity slacked off? Absolutely not. Does the repetitive stream of propaganda that attempts to demonize gun owners have some purpose? Absolutely. The right of self-protection inherent in the carriage of firearms is an ancillary benefit of the Second Amendment, not its primary purpose. The founders established the Second Amendment as a backup to the First Amendment and our other rights as recognized by the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution. It was and is the ultimate check and balance against government tyranny. It ain't about duck hunting. Wendell Bailey has said, "I'm all for gun control. You control yours, and I'll control mine." And that's the end of the missive. I will be posting this up on the website. I mentioned during the course of this, that my description, that I don't necessarily agree with everything towards the tail end of this. And let me clarify for the record what I don't agree with. I don't agree with the statement that, and this is the quote, "I do not believe that there is a conspiracy to deprive Americans of their Second Amendment rights. Yet the historically repetitive nature of action by government representatives and others to deprive Americans of their civil rights could easily lead some to believe it is so. Any mention of Operation Fast and Furious would have to be handled in a separate document." For the record, I disagree with that. I do believe that there is a conspiracy, and it's not a conspiracy, because a conspiracy is something that would require secrecy. And there's no secrecy about their stated goals. There's no secrecy about their stated aim. There's no secrecy about what they're attempting to do. In fact, Dianne Feinstein is on record, on video, of stating that if I could have had my way during the 1994 gun ban, that she would have removed all guns from ownership in the United States of America. So let's make no mistake about it. There is a move, a drive, a conspiracy, if you want to call it that, afoot to end firearms ownership in the United States of America. There's no denying it. Make no mistake about it. Our politicians are desperate to remove your ability to defend yourself appropriately and aggressively from you. The Second Amendment was placed in place behind the Second Amendment as a second step for a very clear and specific reason. And it's outlined in our Declaration of Independence, where our founding fathers who drafted that document clearly delineated out that when a government becomes abusive of its authority and its power, that you don't have not only the right, but you have a duty and an obligation to replace that government with something that is more suitable for the benefit of the American people. Now, it also goes on to say that that responsibility should not be taken lightly, because in doing so, you may find that you've jumped from the frying pan into the fire, as we've seen in many, 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 many revolutions. In fact, the vast majority of them. What you will often find is that today's freedom fighter becomes tomorrow's tyrant. And we've seen that instance in so many replicated situations that you'd be hard-pressed to recognize the fact that the average individual who steps to power after the revolution is almost invariably its detractor and the next tyrant in line. I give you the example of Morsi in Egypt. I give you the example of Castro. I give you the example of Stalin. I give you the example of Lenin. I give you the example of Adolf Hitler. I give you the example of Mao Zedong. I mean, I can keep going until the end of the hour. But the simple reality is this. More often than not, today's freedom fighter will often become tomorrow's tyrant. And I strongly encourage Americans to recognize that fact, think about it long and hard, because to overthrow a government is not, at this point in time, in our best interest. In fact, it's not even desirable. We have an excellent system of constitutional change that we can utilize. What we need to do is not overthrow or revolt against the government that we have. What we need to do is go in and get a hold of that government, rescind and repeal the laws which have been eating out our substance, to use the term of our founding fathers, and to place the rule of law back as the head of our program, our national program. Not just simply our national program. Individual states should also be utilizing these same measures. And I'm going to explain what these measures are. And that leads into today's topic. We're going to have a break in a minute or two, but before we go there, I want you to understand something about how our substance is being eaten out. I want you to understand the method that government is using to accomplish that end. I want you to understand the danger of administrative agencies. I want you to understand how critically dangerous these agencies have become to our nation and to our state. I have up on our Facebook page an audio clip by a group that is called the Institute for Justice. And they explain, and it takes about a half hour to hear this, but I have to tell you, I want everyone who is listening to this to find our Facebook page, even if you're not a Facebook member. And I want you to listen to this broadcast. It's an audio broadcast only. There's no video associated with it. You simply click on the link and listen to the audio broadcast. And I want you to understand it for what it is. It addresses the topic of today's show, which is administrative agencies and how they manufacture law with no oversight or review or legislative attention. Furthermore, the audio goes on to describe how courts have allowed administrative agencies to establish legal approval for their actions, which are motivated, of course, by special interests or that particular agency's self-protection and their desire to improve their own position in life, i.e., whether or not they are accumulating power or funding or simply just recognition. So what I want you to recognize, and what I think is so important, is that you have an opportunity to hear how they use a system called rational basis test. Now, we're going to cover this week a rather significant number of topics related to administrative agencies. And please stick with me this week, and I'll tell you why. I have said to you over and over and over again that the purpose behind this show is to educate, to inform, to motivate, and to activate. And this week, we're going to study the value and the purpose behind administrative agencies, what they do, how they accomplish their mission, if you will, and how that mission is in direct opposition, 180 degrees away from your best interest on a compass. You're going to understand by the end of this week exactly how administrative agencies function, how they operate, what kind of rulemaking processes they put in place, how those rules, which become regulations, parade about as a law that Congress, whether state or federal, has never had an opportunity to review, to look at, to vote upon, and how those administrative agencies are stealing your right to live within the framework of the Constitution. The framework of the Constitution says that you have the right to life, that you have the right to liberty, and you have the right to pursuit of happiness, however you define that. Administrative agencies, for their own self-interest and their own self-benefit, are eating out the substance of the American populace. We're going to learn this week exactly how. And you're going to understand how they get the courts to back their play under something called the rational basis test when you listen to this audio. The rational basis test is a treason by the judiciary against the American people. We're going to take a break. Please find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Please also find us at YouTube/America's Voice Now. That's where we post every show that we do. We'll be back in just a moment.
Fox News Radio, I'm Paul Stevens. Country music star Mindy McCready was found dead of an apparent suicide Sunday at her home in Arkansas. Authorities say she died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. She tried suicide at least 4 other times and battled alcohol and drug problems, but in the past had still hoped to
go back to being a singer and a mom and concentrating on things that are good for my life.
McCready, the 2005 DUI probation hearing, she was 37. Critics of a reported White House immigration reform plan are pointing to
actions the Obama administration can take to provide amnesty for immigrants already living in the United States illegally. The White House backing away from that, saying no specific action was ever taken on the plan.
Fox's Kelly Wright in Washington, the White House calling their framework just a Plan B. Fox News, we report, you decide.
The area's best selection of firearms and ammunition can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry. Top-of-the-line handguns from Kimber, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Glock, Beretta, and many more. A wide selection of ammunition, including blanks, centerfire handgun and rifle, rimfire, a variety of shotgun shells, target, and turkey. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms and ammunition can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt on the next Hugh Hewitt Show. I'll be joined by a veteran ambassador of Africa to update us on the jihadists sweeping down from the north to the south. And Congressman Pete Sessions, our friend from Texas, now the chairman of the Powerful House Rules Committee. What's he up to and what's moving on the floor? How are they going to keep the Democrats from ruining the entire Congress? All in the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Sundays from 6 till 7, following Money Talk with Bob Brinker, it's the Weekend Journal with Hugh Hewitt on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
Who's got the best chili around? We're going to find out February 23rd at the West Plains Civic Center. It's the 7th annual West Plains Public Library Foundation's Chili Cook-Off. Brought to you by West Plains Civic Center, Great Rivers Distributing, and Diamond Media. Put your chili game to the test, or just come sample them all and listen to live music by Bad Mojo. Tickets are $5 in advance or $7 at the door. To reserve your booth, call Sherry Russell at 417-256-4775 or stop by the West Plains Public Library.
Are you looking to save money? Did you know that in the last 20 years, interest rates have never been this low? That's why you should make the smart call today to West Plains Savings and Loan to start your home mortgage. Just imagine how much money you'll save. Key word is save, as in savings and loan. Your loan starts here and stays here. Never would it be sold to a secondary lender. Call today, 256-3042. That's 256-3042. West Plains Savings and Loan. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Weather is a service of News Talk 107.1 The Point. Contact Josh or Cody at 255-2548 for more information on making weather sponsorships part of your marketing plans.
From the Point Weather Center, for this morning, we'll have cloudy skies, clouds and showers through the day today. The high temperature 52. A shower this evening, clearing later tonight, low 28. Sunny for tomorrow, high 48. Mostly sunny skies Wednesday, high 42. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
Family Fun and Fitness, LLC presents rape and assault prevention classes at Country Cupboard in Licking, Missouri. Men, women, boys, and girls, if you want to know how to stack the deck in your favor in a situation where violence is the only answer, this class is for you. Rape and assault prevention classes are held Monday evenings at 5:30 beginning February 11th and run through March 18th. Class size is limited, so call today 417-260-1006 or register at Country Cupboard, 217 North Highway 63 in Licking.
All right, we have returned. We've got a caller on the line, and I'll take that call before we delve into the administrative procedures process. But I do want to remind you folks that this Friday, the West Plains Brew Fest, which is a craft beer tasting event, will be occurring. Now, this is February 22nd at 6 to 9 p.m. at the West Plains Civic Center in the Magnolia Room. There will be 40-plus craft beers, hors d'oeuvres, and other things that you can sample. The participating breweries are Great River Distributing and, let's see. My goodness, Rock Ridge Brewing, Mother's Brewing Company, Public House, Springfield Brewing Company, Piney River, and a host of other small microbreweries. And the tickets in advance are $20. At the door, they're $25. If you buy 10 advance tickets, and you get one for free. There will be the first 300 attendees will get a souvenir beer tasting glass, and it's sponsored by a whole bunch of groups. Proceeds of the festival will be used to reinstate the Gatewood Family Art and Music Scholarship for a local student who majors in art or music. You must be 21 to attend because obviously you're going to be drinking beer. Advance tickets can be purchased at the Party Pantry, the Howell County Outpost, Piney River Brewing in an East Side package here in West Plains. So if you're interested in attending this, just remember that the tickets are $20 in advance or $25 at the door, and designated drivers will also be charged because there's no way for them to police that and verify that you didn't actually drink. But the goal will be for them to be designated drivers in case anyone has had too much, of course. Attend that if you'd like. Okay, I'm going to bring this caller on. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show. Oops, wrong button. Welcome to the show. This is Dean.
How you doing this morning?
I'm doing just great. How are you?
I loved your explanation on telling the difference between a conspiracy and what they actually do, which is called a consensus.
Well, that's very true.
Okay? And this concept of consensus is rooted in the United Nations Agenda 21 program. And believe it or not, you can pick any of these ills that are being that are out attacking our Bill of Rights.
Yes.
And you will find every one of their tenets based in Agenda 21.
Sure.
I don't care what it is, property, guns, population, food, pick one, it's there.
Right. And you're absolutely correct. And this is the policy that they use routinely.
Yes. And probably the most interesting part is that, a lot of people honestly believe that Agenda 21 is just some conspiracy theory.
Well, they have no idea that they are that the Delphi technique is being used on them. And
yes.
Are you familiar with the Delphi technique?
Not totally, but I got a funny feeling I understand what it is, even though I don't know the name.
Well, the Delphi technique goes like this: they get 30 or 50 of us in a room, and excuse me, they explain what the situation is, and whatever that topic may be. And then you hand out, as an example, a voting record for people to do a poll, and everyone, fills in the check boxes and so forth and so on, right? Then you hand it in, and then they take all of those. And, of course, you don't know what your neighbor put down, and you don't know what the guy at the other table put down as the areas that you found either to be in approval of or disapproval with, or what's important or what's not important. And essentially the Delphi technique goes like this. They get that list, and they go through it, and they determine not really what's written down and what's important to the people attending the class, but the bullet points that they want to make. And they basically state that everyone voted to approve this. And, of course, you have no way of knowing that you did or did not be in line with your neighbors. You may think you're the one sole standout who didn't vote for that. But they don't tell you that. And you never have an opportunity to see that. And then they say, well, the group has reached a consensus, and so here's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the consensus that the group has voted for. And it may turn out that not a single person voted for that consensus concept. You understand?
Exactly.
And you'll see this used over and over and over again. I've seen it actually used right here and in the broadband, Missouri Broadband Now project, where the group, the agency who's responsible to go out there and take the pulse, if you will, of the region, goes out there and they have these meetings and everyone puts down what the top 5 things, in what order they think that they have importance. And invariably, the importance always comes back to exactly what their level of relative importance was. So the issues that they want to always address and how the answers come out is amazingly always falling directly in line with what their process and procedure was. And I have to tell you, I know some of the folks who have attended that meeting, and I know that that's not the way it came out in the written answers. And yet, then they say, well, we have a consensus. And so here's the top 5 things in order as the group has chosen them. And that's not true at all. But you're sitting there as the wallflower saying, well, I guess I'm the lone standout who didn't vote that way. What you don't realize is that nobody else voted that way either.
and that's a clear explanation of what happened in that. I can't remember the name of the county you mentioned. I've seen the story, and I can never remember it, but where they blew up the sheriff's porch there, at the sheriff's or police station or whatever it was.
Right.
They confiscated the votes to count them.
Right.
See, when there's ever
it was McGinn County,
any kind of reasonable doubt. Yeah, whenever there's a reasonable doubt, the people have not only a right but an obligation to have an open audit of the count.
Right. But the open audit never occurs, because if you do that, the Delphi technique falls apart. By the way, this Delphi technique and consensus building are both founded on the same principle as the Hegelian dialectic, right? And if you're not familiar with that, that is the concept of...
I'm totally...
Let's create a...
that. I know exactly how it works.
Okay, the Hegelian dialectic says we're going to create a problem, in many cases under the government's guise, under a false flag. Then we're going to raise a hue and cry so that people scream for resolution. And when they scream for resolution, we're going to give it to them, but it almost invariably always comes with their diminution of their rights and liberties. And it's the same concept in the Delphi technique that is used to achieve a consensus versus the Hegelian dialectic. The two fall very, very closely in line. One is used in a smaller group, or in the case of the press, the Delphi technique is used constantly. You'll hear it when you hear the individuals who are reading off a news story where they say, most experts agree. And you say, well, wait a minute. Who the hell are most experts? Give me names. Where did you get most experts from? The perfect example is in global warming, right? Where they go out there and they say, most experts agree that global warming is a problem. And yet, they never give you the opposite argument, which says, well, this is a scientist who disagrees with global warming, or this is a group of scientists who disagree with global warming. They never give you that argument. They lead you to believe, through the Delphi technique, that that the country has achieved consensus that global warming is a problem. And in fact, or the nation, or the world, in global warming's case, they use the Delphi technique to tell you that the international community has achieved consensus that global warming is a risk to mankind. But they never allow you to recognize that there are other dissenting of views or opinions in there.
Right.
So,
and this leads us to that administrative stuff that you talked about. I've had a lot of experience in that. And to give a prime example, because I'm a retired firefighter paramedic from a major urban area, the prime example that I can use is one that everybody's familiar with around here because of the fact that it's a dry area, and that is burn bans.
Right.
Okay? Now, here we have something that we all agree is not good. Fire during a drought is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right? There's no doubt about that. You can ask a child, and he'll tell you, yeah, I agree. That's not good. All right? So they gather this consensus thought, and it's like, all right, then what we're going to do is create an administrative action. The administrative action is called a burn ban.
Right.
Okay? Well, this is all well and good until it gets to the point where one day you decide you're going to burn something, and you've got it under containment. You know what you're doing. You're not going to let this get out of control. All right?
Yep.
And they pull up with their fire engine. They get out, put your fire out,
and then hand you a ticket. Yep. I got you.
Now, it was your idea not to have bad fires.
Right.
And everybody agreed on that. But this administrative action now is acting, like you said, like law. It's called color of law, but it is not law.
I understand, and that's exactly the difference. It's the color of law, but not law. And they shield it behind that color of law concept because they give...
wait.
You got to hurry up now. The break's coming.
I will. I'm coming up. Okay. And the easiest way to avoid this burn ban ticketing is all they would have to do instead of using the word burn ban is burn precaution.
Yeah. I hear you. Hey, listen, thanks for the call. Thanks very much.
Mike, you take care.
Okay, folks, we've got a break coming up, and there's other callers waiting. Callers, just bear with us for a moment, and we're going to run through this break. It's a quarter-hour break, so it's a shorty. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. When we come back, I didn't really get to this administrative agency stuff, and I've got to address that because you folks need to know exactly what and who and how administrative agencies are tearing our nation to shreds for all intents and purposes. We'll be right back.
The New York Times recently did a story on preppers. The story concluded that prepping was very rational behavior. Preppers are doctors, lawyers, teachers, builders, and plumbers, people just like you. At Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance, we specialize in the products and knowledge to provide your own safety net for troubled times. Isn't it time you joined your Ozarks neighbors who are already working toward independence? That's Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance, 3225 Highway 62 East in Mountain Home, 870-492-4030.
There's one man on this earth who really, truly gets it.
Barack Obama is destroying the economy. He's destroying our school system by nationalizing the student loan program. He's destroying the industrial heartland of this nation by doing exactly what he said he would do. Driving up the cost of electricity, driving up the cost of doing business, putting hard-working men and women out of jobs.
Mark Levin.
Weeknights from 5 till 8, Mark Levin on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
I'm Jeff Gordon, warning parents about pertussis. What's that? Well, imagine a cough barreling through your infant's body at up to 100 miles per hour, with enough force to make him gasp for air. For weeks, even months. Pertussis, or whooping cough, is potentially fatal. Now imagine you gave... I'm Jeff Gordon, warning parents about pertussis. What's that?
All right, we're back. We got one quick caller on the line, and then we're going to hit our... by the way, someone called in and told me that it was McMinn County, not McGinn. It's McMinn County in Tennessee, and that is correct. I just mispronounced it. I was trying to talk and read and run the board all at the same time. Go ahead, caller, quickly.
Well, greetings, salutations, Mike.
Good morning.
May I read a short definition from Webster's 1828 dictionary on conspiracy?
Okay.
Okay, it says a combination of men for an evil purpose, an agreement between two or more persons to commit some crime in concert, particularly a combination to commit treason or excite sedition or insurrection against the government of a state, a plot or conspiracy against the life of a king, a conspiracy against the government. It mentions nothing about it being done in secret.
Yeah. Well, typically when you think of conspiracy, you
Right.
think of people sitting around and cooking up a concept, right, or cooking up an idea. And
Right.
and that's all I meant by that. I wasn't trying to indicate that every conspiracy is done in secret. When you look at the way you're charged criminally with conspiracy, it's always considered a secret. In other words, individuals are working to accomplish a goal, a crime, and they do it in a conspiratorial format, which means that, of course, it would be necessarily secret.
Right.
That was all I was pointing out.
Okay, I'll let you get back. One more point.
Yes.
Another tool they use in their conspiracy is facilitators. When the Missouri Department of Transportation was trying to get these scenic byways through here, which take people's property, they use a facilitator at these meetings, and they would try and divide up the group into these little individual pockets, and to control them.
Well, that's the Delphi technique I was talking about.
Right.
So it's very. Here's what happens: the facilitator goes in there, and they are trained to understand they identify the leaders, right? And so they identify those who are leaders, or the loudmouth, or the weak, or the non-committal members, and they utilize those individuals to achieve a desired end. And what happens is they break these people up into groups, and to express their concerns about programs or projects or policies or whatever the question is. And then they take those who are the loudmouth or the agitator, and they use those to divide and conquer. They'll insult or ridicule the people who are against their procedure or their policy, and they manipulate the opinions of one person or group against the other. And they appear to make those who are against their standard either ridiculous or unknowledgeable or, inarticulate or foolish or whatever the case may be. Then they attempt to utilize those groups against each other to drive frustration. It's the divide and conquer mentality. You're seeing our president use it every single day when he's dividing the rich from the poor, when he's dividing the millionaires and billionaires from the rest of us, when he's dividing blacks and browns and whites, when he's dividing those who have health care and those who don't, those who are legal and those who are illegal. They attempt to use the divide and conquer principle. And with that, they anger certain participants and they accelerate tension, right? Once they've accelerated the tension, then they are able to utilize that very effectively to redirect the reactions of the people who are in the different groups. And this is a psychological profiling technique, and it's been used for many, many years. This isn't something new. It's very effective when you're trying to direct community participation or community involvement. It's very effective in schools. It's very effective with parents that are or concerned about a specific incident or issue that goes on at a school. It's very, very effective with teachers. And the simple truth is this. The vast majority of people have absolutely no idea that they are being manipulated in this way. And your example of utilizing this Delphi technique against those individuals who were concerned about the takeaway land around the rivers is a perfect example. They build a consensus utilizing the Delphi technique, then ridicule those who are a farmer who says, well, wait a minute, you can't just take my property away. And then they say, well, they ridicule that individual or slight him, and then get the rest of the group to stand up and say, well, wait a second, it's all of our river, not just yours, and we have the right to, and they anger the two participants to get them frustrated and fighting amongst themselves. Then the consensus comes back that, well, we're all in agreement except for this one stick in the mud who's really just trying to slow down progress. You get it?
Right.
That's exactly how they do it. And it works, by the way, folks, almost every time. Start to recognize it when they're using it on you, because they are using it on you. I guarantee you that. Next time you're at a public meeting, watch and see how it works. It's called the Delphi technique. You can go look it up on the internet. This isn't something that I'm making up. This is a long-established psychiatric and psychological process by which we are manipulated into agreeing that this facilitator and their ideas are correct. That's just a fact, people. So listen, I want to thank you for the call. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thank you, and beware of facilitators.
There you go. Beware the facilitator. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, folks. Listen, I didn't even get to this administrative procedures process today, and it's important that we do so, and I'll tell you why. We have 500-plus agencies within the federal government alone that pass administrative procedures. And administrative procedures, for the record, are passed about as law. And it's really important that you understand this. So I'll tell you what, tomorrow, because what happens is we get caught up in telephone calls. And I respect and I appreciate the fact that you want to all have input. But what I think I'm going to do tomorrow and for the remainder of this week is so that I can get through some of this material, I'm going to have to hold the phone calls until, say, the last 15 minutes of the show, at which point we can discuss that which we have learned during the process of the earlier 45 minutes. Because otherwise, we get sidetracked and we never actually get to the topic that we want to address. And what I want you folks to be able to recognize and understand is the dire danger that we are in from administrative agencies. How they have completely taken over our nation and are making law that no one is accountable for. And you're subjected to it. You have to realize and understand what the Administrative Procedures Act is. And so tomorrow, I'm going to go over, first of all, the Administrative Procedures Act, which, by the way, is codified into law. And it is the Administrative Procedures Act, or the APA, was originally enacted in 1946. And it is the federal law that governs the way in which all administrative agencies, and this is federal now, of course, not state, but there is a state variant of the APA. And this particular act is the governing body, if you will, for how all administrative agencies of the federal government operate. How they operate, what their purpose is, and how they establish regulations. Now, make no mistake about it. The word regulation is completely interchangeable with the word law. Make no mistake. Regulation and law have the same weight. And never let anyone tell you they don't. The APA sets up a process in the federal courts for the review of agency decisions. But here's the problem. The federal courts allow review of these agency decisions. But the federal court uses the rational basis test to determine whether or not these agencies have the right to continue to use the authority that they're claiming in the administrative process. And that's where the rub lies. Here's what you have to recognize. The process by which the rational basis test goes is this. The judge is actually instructed, and you're going to hear this if you listen to that broadcast I have posted up on Facebook. The judge is actually instructed, like nowhere else in the law, to assist the agency in determining how and under what circumstances that law could have a rational basis. And so a judge can sit there and say, well, look at it this way. If you were to go into a criminal court and the judge were to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to be aware that this is the prosecutor who's going to prosecute this guy. This is his defense attorney, and I am the judge. However, I have, in this particular case, the strict responsibility to assist the prosecution in finding this guy guilty. How would you respond? You would call that a treason of the court, and it is. And when you understand how they use the rational basis test, the judge is obligated to assist them in finding a rational basis to allow that law to stand, even though it's unconstitutional. Okay, I'm going to be deleterious if I don't read off our sponsors, because these guys are the ones who keep you listening on the air. I want to talk about our friends over at West Plains Pawn and Gun. They can be found at westplainspawn.com. They are a gun shop, a pawn shop, and also a jewelry store. They have about 500 guns under cover, and they are an excellent, outstanding location for you to find armaments, accessories, ammunition, and a host of anything else tied into the firearms industry. They are also a Title III or Class 3 dealer, which means that they can handle suppressors and fully automatic weapons, short-barreled rifles, and that kind of thing. If that's an interest for you, make sure that you get down to see them. They are on Route 160, about a mile and a half past Walmart, on the right-hand side. You can also call them at 417-256-3000. That's 417-256-3000. They're also available on the web at westplainspawn.com. Make sure that you see our friends over at the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue, right off the square in West Plains at 417-257-7799. You can also find them on the web at batterystation.com. They have ammunition, and these are the guys with that awesome life straw I keep telling you about. If you don't have a life straw and one for every member of your family and one for every vehicle you own, you're deleterious in your responsibility to your family. It's called the Battery Station. They have a product called the Life Straw. You've got to get one. They run $20 a piece, folks. It's the cheapest investment you can ever make. You can stick this thing in a puddle of dirty water and literally get fresh water out of it. And it costs $20. It's a lifetime supply. It handles 350 gallons of water, purifies 350 gallons of water before you have to dispose of it. 303 Washington Avenue, 257-7799, batterystation.com. Bill Stone over at Stone Construction, handling remodeling, custom and new construction, light commercial, private home, farm, any kind of work that you need done. He is able to do it. He and his team are working with things like pole barns, shops, decks, concrete work, structural work, welded pipe corrals. Pretty much there's nothing that they don't do, from hardwood flooring and framing and foundation, dirt work, electrical, plumbing, roofing, concrete. There's nothing that this group doesn't do. Bill Stone can be found at 293-0116. That's 293-0116. Excellent contractor. They also have a contract program where... Sorry, folks, that's the end of our show. We'll be back tomorrow morning, and we will run over administrative agencies all day tomorrow.
A new UN warning that also blames both sides, the regime and rebels, of war crimes like murder and torture. This is a new push to arm Syria's opposition fails in Europe. Fox News Radio Simon Owens live in London.
Dave, Britain had been leading a call to relax a European Union arms embargo on Syria, saying in the absence of a diplomatic breakthrough, all options should be considered. But other European